Welcome to another episode of CSS Broadcasting. As of today, we are about to execute another interesting topic where I think that all of us can relate. But before anything else, I am your host for today, Kristine Jabson, together with Miss Camilla Naval.
That's right, partner. We're going to talk about the values, tradition, and cultures of the Philippines through their way of communicating. Do you ever wonder how we can understand each other by just simply waving our hand or just by raising our eyebrows?
Yeah, it's interesting how we can make such gestures and know the meaning of it right away. You, Camilla, what do you think are your habits when it comes to communicating with another person?
It's probably not just me, but when I'm giving direction when someone is asking, I often pursue my lips to point the direction instead of answering nandoon o nariyan lang, especially if we're too lazy to speak and make use of our hands to communicate with people.
Yeah, I do that sometimes as a habit. The communication style of Filipinos is indeed unique. We also tend to express our opinions and ideas diplomatically and with humility to avoid appearing arrogant, like pagsasabi ng po at opo para hindi magmukhang mayabang at bastos. The tone of voice varies widely by language, dialect, and region.
Yes, just like the Ilongas and Ilongas. Their tone of voice will sound sweet even they are mad.
Stoy, gano'n mo ni mo yaman. Badakpan na ka ni karon, ibunggo, tagid ka. Sige yada. Kaming mga Ilonggo kahit galit, sweet pa rin.
Filipinos often communicate indirectly in order to prevent loss of face and invoking hiya on either side of an exchange. They tend to avoid interrupting others and they are more attentive to posture, expression, and tone of voice to draw meaning.
I agree, and we cannot deny that Filipinos and their ways of expressing respect are some of the things that people admire the most. Such as the pagmamano, honoring gesture which involves us asking for an elder's hand and gently touching our own forehead with it while bowing when we are about to visit our relatives or grandparents saying mano po.
Filipinos tend to call someone by using hand facing downwards and waving your hands towards oneself, and if a person wants someone attention, it is common for them to make a sound like psst.
When it comes to physical contact, we Filipinos tend to walk hand in hand or arm in arm, especially when we are walking with our relatives or friends, regardless of their gender.
Yeah, that's actually the concept of proxemics. Do you know what proxemic means?
Unfortunately, no. Can you enlighten us about it?
Proxemics are the different kinds of distance that occur between people or also gives meaning. Standing too far away or too close from a colleague can affect the effectiveness of verbal communication.
Oh, so that's what proxemics mean. At the brain.
Yes. So now that we're done talking about some general communication styles of us Filipinos, I realized that we do have a lot of indirect and nonverbal communication.
Oh yeah, and now that you have mentioned it, we do use a lot of nonverbal communication styles. That's quite impressive in my opinion.
So before we move on in the next segment of our show, we would like to show a brief commercial titled Tara Pilipinas.
Tara na dito sa Pilipinas, ipamalas na ang tradisyong Pilipino. Tara na dito sa Pilipinas, oo, tara na dito sa Pilipinas. Diyan na sa Pilipinas, pakilala na Pilipinas, para na dito sa Pilipinas, ipamalas na ang tradisyong Pilipino. Tara na dito sa Pilipinas, oo, tara na dito sa Pilipinas. Asamang iskina, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, kultura ay sadyang tradisyon ay salamin ng ating buhay. Sama-sama ang buong bansa, bawat talento ay may halaga. Sama-sama tayong magsasaya. Tara na dito sa Pilipinas, ipamalas na ang tradisyong Pilipino. Tara na dito sa Pilipinas, oo, tara na dito sa Pilipinas. Saan nagsulong, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, mga salita ay sadyang ganga-hanga. Ating nalamin ang kultura ng bayan, maging saksi sa isa't isa. Bawat talento ay may halaga, sama-sama tayo magsasaya. Tara na dito sa Pilipinas, ipamalas na ang tradisyong Pilipino. Tara na dito sa Pilipinas, oo, tara na dito sa Pilipinas. Tara na dito sa Pilipinas, ipamalas na ang tradisyong Pilipino. Tara na dito sa Pilipinas, oo, tara na dito sa Pilipinas.
Ang masasabi ko dito
Yes,
sa
sir. Would you
akin
mind
ito,
me
ay
asking for the
maganda
city and state of
na
death?
ipinapakita nito kung gaano kaganda ang Pilipinas. At pinapakita din dito ang mga ugali ng mga Pilipino, kung paano makitungo sa ibang lahi ng maayos. At higit sa lahat, hindi sila nahihiyang
1 moment,
ipakita ang kanilang talento. Pati hindi rin sila nagdadalawang isip sa taong nangangailangan ng tulong. Yung
Yes,
songstress
sir.
ng
You are
kanta
an
ay
authorized
maganda
designer for this
dahil hindi
project
ito
now.
nakakaboring pakinggan at nakakaindak pa ito sa mga manonood.
It's feeling surreal after watching the commercial. Nakaka-proud na isa akong Pilipino kasi parang if you think about it, there's no other country that can compare to the Philippines in my opinion na. Kasi when it comes to their culture and tradition, it's really unique, especially when there's festival ongoing. I mean, you can just walk in on any house to eat and keep in mind that you and the house owner can be completely strangers to each other, and yet they're willing to feed you regardless of the nationality because there's something to celebrate about. I mean, how crazy is that? Can you think of another country that does that? And it really shows how passionate and hospitable we are as a Filipino.
Actually, we have invited one person who's an actor, singer, songwriter, dancer, model, record producer, and record label executive to talk about this topic. And he is also the big winner of Pinoy Big Brother, Teen Clash 2010. Please welcome Mr. James Reed. Let's give him a round of applause.
Welcome to our show, Mr. Diet. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I'm good. It's an honor and privilege to be here today, and thank you for inviting me here.
So, Mr. Diet, you were born in Australia, right?
Yes. I grew up there, and when I was 15, I flew here to the Philippines. And no need to call me Mr. Reed. You can call me James. And yes, I actually grew up on Australia, and yes, I came here to the Philippines because of our family status in Australia.
So, how was your stay in the Philippines?
It was hard because there's a communication barrier in there, and I can understand most of the Filipino words even though my mom is a pure Filipino. Another thing that I can actually say is regarding communication that there are some unique communication styles that Filipinos practice that we Australians are not used to, like when you are talking with someone else.
Could you perhaps elaborate those unique communication styles that you've been noticed while you were staying here in the Philippines?
I was actually dumbfounded when my colleague pointed their finger to someone, since in Australia it's actually rude to point fingers on someone. Instead of pointing our index, we actually indicate them verbally when we are talking about someone. So yeah, that's one.
But may I ask, what are some of your pleasant experiences with Filipinos?
Honestly, The most pleasant experience I had here in the Philippines is I think the thing called mano at first. I think it was awkward, but as I stay here in the Philippines, it's really nice tradition because now I always do that to the elders as a sign of respect for them and also to display their hospitality. Filipinos will often use their finest crockery and cutlery when they have visitor. It's such a nice tradition. It gives the visitor, like me, when I came here in the Philippines, a warm welcome.
Yes, we always do the thing called mano to pay respect for the elderly.
Upon staying here in the Philippines, what are your most valued experiences here? Is it Christmas, festival, or perhaps practicing some of our traditions?
All of it during Christmas, all of my family members gather in one house, singing, drinking, and exchanging gifts. It's just so full of love and happiness. During festivals, all the people are outside the house waiting for the parade and events to start. Everyone starts jumping and shouting so loud. So that's so unique.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, for answering all of our questions. And do you have anything to say to our audience?
First, I would love to thank the CSS Broadcasting for having me here. It's such a great pleasure. And for the audience, please do support me for my upcoming movie. And I don't want to spoil you anything, so when it's out, please do watch it. And thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Before Mr. Reed leaves, everyone please give him a round of applause.
Once again, thank you, Mr. Reed, for joining us today.
And that's all for our today episode of CSS Broadcasting. Thank you to everyone who watched and listened to us today. Once again, I'm your host, Camilla.
And I'm Kristine. See you again in our next episode.
Goodbye, everyone.